As Philadelphia Eagles training camp continues down at the NovaCare complex, I think the biggest thing we're learning from this year's camp is the Eagles might have the best linebacker room in the entire NFL. We'll get into that and more coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to this Thursday edition of the show. I'm your host, Louis DiBiase, 4 to 5 episodes a week, downloaded into your phone on all podcast platforms, on YouTube as well. And we also got 2 squad shows live every Tuesday and Thursday that go from 12 o'clock to 1 p.m., hour-long specials on top of the 5 daily episodes you get. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Eagles wherever you get the show, especially with the season starting up. We've got our shorts that we're posting on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Each and every day, we are your number one source for Philadelphia Eagles content. And we've been really diving into a lot of training camp storylines the past 2 weeks. The biggest storyline I think we cannot deny is that, and it's crazy to say this as a Philadelphia Eagles fan, my entire life, the opposite of what I'm about to say has been a reality. I think we're starting to learn the Philadelphia Eagles not only have one of the best linebackers in football in Zack Baun, I think they might have the deepest and the best, most talented linebacker room in the entire NFL. Now, is Zack Baun the best linebacker in the NFL? No. Is Jihaad Campbell the favorite to win Rookie of the Year in 2025? No. Nakobe Dean is coming off a serious injury. I think Jeremiah Trotter Jr. has his limitations. Smael Mondon is a day 3 rookie. But when you combine all of those guys, how good they look in training camp, Nakobe Dean's injury, his recovery looks like it's coming along a lot better than we initially thought. He might even avoid the PUP list altogether. When you combine everything these guys are doing, their talent, their ceiling, the depth of this team at this position, Vic Fangio's track record, his strength as a linebacker coach, as a linebacker talent evaluator, I think the Eagles have the best linebacker room in the NFL. Zack Baun was a first-team All-Pro last year, and he's paid like a top 5 linebacker now, so I think he is at least heading into this year, considering what he did last year, he's a top 5 guy at this spot. Jihaad Campbell has been dominating training camp, had another strong day today, actually played some edge rusher too. So Jihaad Campbell, I think, could be potentially a favorite to win Rookie of the Year, one of the more versatile pieces of this draft class, has every trait that you want in an elite Micah Parsons, Fred Warner, even Zack Baun level of Swiss Army knife at this position. When you look at Nakobe Dean, coming off a career year, again, his injury, it looks like it is healing, I think, faster than we initially thought. And of course, I'm sure he's working a lot harder, knowing that he's got a lot of competition for his job. And Jihaad Campbell and Jeremiah Trotter Jr., I think, is underratedly so one of the guys that's having a better camp that we're not talking about a whole lot. And Smael Mondon today, it sounds like he really dominated practice, had a couple big-time run stuffs against Saquon Barkley in the first-team offense. You can thank Vic Fangio for this, right? Because Fangio's scheme really puts an emphasis on linebacker talent, speed, range, athleticism, football IQ, the ability to be able to hold your own in both zone coverage and man coverage. Like, Fangio requires good linebackers. He prioritizes, he values this position as much as any other spot. And he is such a good linebacker talent evaluator. Just look at what we saw from Zack Baun and Nakobe Dean last year, that the Eagles have been a team that normally doesn't care about linebacker, normally just kind of gets by at this position. Maybe they have one solid player, and that's about it. And that's like been the reality of this football team since the 1970s. And now Fangio has turned this team into linebacker U. Like, you know, there's Stoutland University. There's kind of becoming a Fangio University for linebackers. And I think Jihaad Campbell is going to be just that next guy in line at that spot. You got to give Fangio credit for how he's turned around what was the bleakest spot of the roster in 2023. I mean, just 2 years ago, we had to watch Zach Cunningham play linebacker, and, you know, they signed Miles Jack off the streets and Shaq Leonard. Like, there was just so many guys, and from that roster, they were just putting together on the 53 these Band-Aids of these guys that just were not talented. So I think now you look at where they are. Fangio deserves a lot of credit for that, for how good they are at the top with elite talent in Baun, Trotter, and Dean, but also how deep they are. Because again, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. and Smael Mondon, they look both like, I don't want to say day 3 steals, but 2 top-end backup talents that I think both eventually could be high-floor starters. Again, I don't think Jeremiah Trotter Jr. nearly has the ceiling of Campbell, Baun, of Dean even, to a degree. But I think Jeremiah Trotter Jr. could be a TJ Edwards that's just a consistent, steady, good, maybe not great, but good linebacker for a decade plus. I think Trotter is looking like that player. Again, he's probably had the most underrated camp of anybody so far throughout 2 weeks. And then Smael Mondon, like you look at his range, his athleticism, his strength of being a man coverage linebacker, how he was blowing up plays against the run today. Like that's an exciting prospect with a really high ceiling. And it's kind of like with Stoutland, like just get talented players to him and let him mold those guys. Like just get these balls of clay and give it to Stoutland and let him mold him into an elite offensive lineman. I think that's the same thing the Eagles are doing right now at linebacker. Like just get these guys with elite traits like Campbell and Mondon, and he'll see the strengths in those players. He'll get the most out of those guys like he did last year with Zack, Baun, and Nakobe Dean. And that looks like so far the strongest position on the roster throughout training camp, which is just, again, as an Eagles fan, I'm accustomed to the opposite. Normally, Howie Roseman's Eagles rosters just get by at linebacker. And while I still don't think Howie has completely changed his philosophy and suddenly he's going to, pay Nakobe Dean a huge contract and keep Campbell, he just paid Zack Baun, and he's going to draft linebackers all the time at the top of the draft and sign big-name free agents at this position. I don't think he suddenly values linebacker just as much as pass rushers or, left tackles or quarterbacks. But also credit to Howie Roseman. Like, he has been able to change his philosophy as time goes on, as the NFL has required you to change, and you need different kind of personnel to succeed in the modern day. I give him credit for seeing what his coach needs. Vic Fangio needs and wants good linebacker play in his defense, and Howie Roseman said, all right, I'm going to go get you that guy. I'm going to pay Zack Baun a top 5 contract. I'm going to draft Jihaad Campbell in the first round. We have Nakobe Dean and Jeremiah Trotter in-house, and let's get another talented, traitsy player in Smael Mondon into this linebacker room. You got to give Howie credit for all of that. And I think another thing, because again, I don't think he's completely changing his linebacker philosophy, although Fangio has made him, try harder at this position. And the NFL just, I think, right now requires you have to have good linebackers on the second level. But also, I just think in general, Howie's not settling anymore. Because again, he prioritizes edge rusher and defensive tackle more than inside linebacker. He prioritizes corner and left tackle more as well. But what he's not doing like he used to in years past is settling at one position for the sake of another. Basically saying, look, we take linemen and receivers and corners early on in drafts. Like that's where we put all our big time assets, big contracts, big time trades, early draft picks. Like we're always going to put those at the most important positions. While you should do that the majority of the time, there are years where you need to also address the other positions. And I think Howie Roseman the last 2 years has done a great job of that. He took, in his last 4 picks in the top 2 rounds, he went corner, linebacker, safety. He's not saying anymore, we're going to win with linebackers and safeties and corners, but we're going to win because of linemen and quarterbacks and receivers. Like, no. He is not going to sacrifice one position in the name of strengthening another. He's going to try, and it's very hard to do this, but he's going to try to have studs at every position. He's going to invest at least a couple premier assets in every position to have a complete roster. And that's what I love about what they're doing at linebacker right now, too, is it's just a representation of that mindset of Howie not settling and just maybe taking some, 25% of your first, second round picks, all of your money, and allocate it to linebacker, safety, corner. Because nowadays in the NFL, especially in a Fangio defense, you can't just have good pass rushers. Like you have to have talent on the second and third level, or else you're going to get seasons like 2023. You're going to get seasons like, pretty much from 2012 up until 2000 and whenever Darius Slay came in, 2020. So for a decade, they were dealing with this kind of issue at a lot of these positions. including linebackers. So credit to Howie Roseman, credit to Vic Fangio. My biggest takeaway so far from training camp, especially today and yesterday's practice, this week in general, is the linebackers. It sounds like they look incredible, and I cannot wait to watch these guys in the preseason. And again, Nakobe Dean's not even healthy right now. When they get him back, like, this is going to be a really deep linebacker room, probably the deepest they've had since. The one good thing about 2015 with Chip Kelly was they had a good linebacker room. They had D'Amico Ryans, they had Michael Kendricks, Jordan Hicks, Kiko Alonso, as much as we cringe hearing that name. I think that's the last time they looked this good at linebacker, and it's crazy. The Philadelphia Eagles are linebacker university right now. How things have changed in the world of the NFL for Howie Roseman and for the Birds. All right, guys, coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast, got a special guest to preview the Eagles from a fantasy perspective heading into the 2025 season, a guy I've been listening to for as long as I can remember, since I was a kid. In middle school, I was listening to his podcast on NFL Network. Michael Fabiano, senior analyst, fantasy analyst at Sports Illustrated, our new host of the Locked On Dynasty podcast with Marcus Mosher. Michael Fabiano joins the show coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings that bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest, some days on the course or off it, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized. I got 2 full-time jobs. A lot of stuff going on outside of the Locked On Eagles podcast. 5 Hour Energy, even when I was working overnights at a radio station in Buffalo, New York, saved my life for some years. And going back to golf, because we've been golfing all summer. Golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. I love a transfusion. It's my go-to drink on the course. The grape, ginger, lime flavor gives you the best parts of that clubhouse go-to without chasing down the beverage cart. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, you can use our promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your order. That's Locked On Golf in all capital letters. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Thanks as always for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Really excited for my next guest on the show, somebody I've been listening to and watching for his fantasy advice for a long time. It's Michael Fabiano, senior fantasy analyst for Sports Illustrated, also a new host of the Locked On Dynasty podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network with my guy Marcus Mosher of Locked On Cowboys. Mike, thanks for joining the show to do a little fantasy preview for the Birds.
Yeah, man. Glad to obviously be part of the team. And I will warn Eagles fans out there, I'm going to maybe say a few things you're not going to like.
That's okay. And that's where I wanted to start the show, because my first question for you before we were talking before the show is about Saquon Barkley. Obviously, over 2,000 rushing yards last year, 13 touchdowns, just 60-plus yard run after 60-plus yard run. I think personally it was the best season a running back's ever had, but historically, like, regression after that kind of season happens naturally. I don't want to say, are you expecting a regression, because I think there has to be one, but are you expecting like an extreme regression from last year? Is he even in the RB1, the first running back off the board conversation for you heading into 2025? Or where do you see Saquon's spot right now compared to other players at that position?
Yeah, I mean, I have, we have to make sure we say his name correctly. Baun Robinson.
Yes, I was going to say he changed it on us.
Yes, I've got Jahmyr Gibbs and, then Saquon. But I have to be honest with you. I'm concerned about Saquon Barkley. I am big into trends. I am big into NFL history. And, normally if a guy falls into maybe one sort of negative trend, it's like, okay, maybe he can overcome it. Saquon is involved in 3. And if you also are superstitious and worried about the Madden curse, then it's 4. I'm not gonna talk about the Madden curse, although Christian McCaffrey was on there last season. But first off, you look at the curse of 370, which I'm sure you've heard of. It's basically when a running back has had 370 or more touches in a single season, typically the numbers decline the following year. In fact, I've done some of the research on here, and you go back to 2010, The only running back who had 370 more touches and actually scored more fantasy points the following year was Ray Rice, believe it or not.
Right.
And some of the names that faltered hard are some of the best of the best. Now, some of these guys did get hurt. David Johnson got hurt. Christian McCaffrey got hurt. Le'Veon Bell, we all know what happened with him with the whole mess with the Steelers. Maurice Jones-Drew got hurt. But then, look at guys like DeMarco Murray in 2014 after having a massive season with the Cowboys, and the regression came. Josh Jacobs saw that kind of regression in 2022. He dropped 147 points the following year. Derrick Henry, who's amazing. Remember, he got hurt the following year, and so his numbers went down. Najee Harris saw a decline of 77 fantasy points. I think you have to expect that Saquon is going to probably score 80 to 100 fewer points than he did last year, and draft him as if that's going to be the case. Now, I mentioned there were more than one trend. The other one, or one of the other ones, is 400 combined carries, regular season, playoffs. Okay? This has been detrimental to a lot of running backs. And again, when you look at the list, there's a lot of guys who ended up getting hurt the following year, but maybe that's part of it. Right, Lou? I mean, maybe that's part of it. Terrell Davis. You remember Jamal Anderson? I remember he tore up his knee on, I think it was a Monday night against the Cowboys, actually. Edgerrin James got hurt the following year. Larry Johnson, Sean Alexander. Like, I'm not talking about curtain jerkers here. These are the best of the running back position when they were in their prime. Jamal Lewis, Dorsey Levens, Arian Foster. Like, all these guys saw major declines from a fantasy perspective. A lot of it had to do with injuries after having over 400 combined carries regular season and postseason. In fact, there's one guy in my research that actually had more points.
I was going to say, is there any trend breaker? I was wondering if there was a guy. Okay.
Had 64 more points the following year. The other three players who were better were only better by a couple of points. Eddie George had a better year. Walter Payton, Thurman Thomas. Like, I go back.
And I was going to say, these are all a long time ago.
The majority of the players who had 400 combined carries between the regular and postseason either got hurt the following year or saw a pretty significant decline in terms of what they produced. Now, this one here is the most interesting to me. They're all interesting.
Yeah.
But this one here is more sort of condensed because there's not as many people on this list of 2,000-yard rushers. And Saquon rushed for 2,005 yards last year. Saquon Barkley, became one of a very small list of players to reach that 2,000-yard rushing mark in a single season. Did you know that every single other running back who rushed for 2,000 yards in a single season saw a decline of no less than 99.4 fantasy points the following year? And that was Eric Dickerson.
Yeah.
Who is one of the greatest running backs in the history of the league. Derrick Henry dropped 140 points. Adrian Peterson dropped 120 points. Chris Johnson dropped 120 points. Jamal Lewis dropped 160 points. TD got hurt. Barry Sanders dropped 114 points after rushing for 2,000 yards. And then, you can mention O.J. Simpson. That was way back. I mean, that was back in 73. That was when I was born, for crying out loud.
Right.
He dropped 115 points. Listen, I'm not trying to scare Eagles fans, but I'm trying to tell fantasy managers out there, don't draft last year's best team. Does that mean that I wouldn't draft Saquon Barkley? Not in the top 5. If he fell to like 8, maybe 8 or 9, I'm trying to draft this year's best team. And every single trend that you can find that's negative for a running back falls right into Barkley's lap this season. And listen, I love Saquon Barkley, even though I've been a Cowboys fan forever. He's a great player.
Yeah, sorry, Eagles fans. I wasn't going to say that, but he had to mention it.
Trust me, I'm so tired of
I knew that information. I was sitting on it.
I'm jealous of the Eagles and their fans, and Howie Roseman knows how to run a team, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because I'll start swearing. Because I can't try it. Don't drive me nuts. But the bottom line here is that the trends are not positive.
No.
And Saquon's had a lot of work in his career. And keep in mind, I mean, remember, he missed almost a full year with the Giants.
That's the thing. He's had an injury history, and he's not he's 25 years old,
Exactly. So I would say, listen, if you're an Eagles fan, you want to draft, I totally get it. I understand, but you gotta look at this data and be like, geez, Louise. I mean, this is pretty damning evidence of a imminent regression for Saquon Barkley. I hope he doesn't get hurt. We don't want that, but I mean, that's also happened to a lot of guys who had over 2,000 yards rushing, who's had over 400 combined carries in the regular and postseason,
Right.
who've had 370 touches in a single season.
Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building your wealth. This is huge for me as somebody that's looking to get in the house buying market in a couple years. Got to stop purchasing so many vintage hats on eBay. Stop using so many food delivery apps, right? I got to stop my spending. Monarch Money helps you balance managing your money and also building your wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com. You're going to get 50% off your order. 50% off at monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. And remember, this is for our viewers and listeners. Like, this is from a fantasy perspective. I don't think Saquon's, you mentioned DeMarco Murray. It's funny. He went from Dallas, that great year in 2014, came to Philly in 2015 and was a disaster. A lot of that was because of the workload. I don't think suddenly he's going to have that kind of season in Philadelphia. I still think he'll be very productive and have around like 1,600 rushing yards. But yeah, I mean, there's going to be a regression this year from a fantasy perspective. And I think that's part of why a part of the regression also might come because the Eagles might also see all that data and say, we can't have him. We can't use him in the historic way, with the historic usage rate he had last year. Mm-hmm. He's not going to hold up when the games matter in the playoffs. So that could also kind of dip into his production too, is like they just might not use him as much during the fantasy portion of the regular season because they know they need to keep him ready for the run. So I think honestly, they might even throw the football a little bit more.
Which obviously is not great for Saquon too. And you mentioned, him rushing for 1,500 yards, 600 yards. Now things have changed because there's 17 games now. Mm-hmm. No running back has rushed for more than 1,491 yards in a year after rushing for 2,000. That was Barry Sanders, and he still saw a drop of 114 fantasy points.
Yeah, that's crazy. So again, I think proceed with caution when, again, it's comparatively speaking, you're deciding between Saquon and Robinson and Gibbs. Where did you have him ranked? Is he your RB?
I have Saquon third. I have
RB3. I thought so. So that's the thing. Like, it's not like you think he's going to be a complete bust this year.
No. But see, but it's within the realm of possibility.
Sure.
And I'm not saying he'll be a complete bust because he's suddenly lost it and he's not a good player anymore. Of course not. He's a great player. Mm-hmm. But boy, these guys are humans. And I mean, outside of Derrick Henry, who's kind of a unicorn, you take the punishment like that and all that work. He's 28 years old, so I mean he's not an old man, but he's from a running back perspective, he's getting to that point where you're going to be worried about him. There are hurdles that he's going to have to leap that a lot of the other greats in the NFL and history have not been able to hurdle. That will ultimately decide whether or not he's a top 5 running back again next season from a fantasy perspective, or he falls out of the top 10 or 12 altogether. And I think both of those scenarios are in play.
Is there a guy on the Eagles offense from an ADP perspective that you really like where he's going? Like, that's your favorite Eagles pick for the 2025 fantasy season. Like, obviously Saquon, to get him, as you mentioned, you might be comfortable with him at like pick 8, but not in the top 5. Looking at where Jalen Hurts is going to compared to some other quarterbacks and like Brown, Goddard, Smith, of all the other skill position players not named Saquon, is there a guy from a value perspective that might be your favorite Eagles pick this year?
Yeah, it's probably Devontae Smith.
Ooh, okay.
A.J. Brown's still going in the top 2 rounds.
Right.
So, I mean, there's no real – I mean, he's going where he should be going. So there's no value in Saquon, even if he falls to 8. Again, with all the –
feels like that's kind of the whole Eagles offense, to be honest.
Right. I mean, Jalen Hurts is, he's a top 3 fantasy quarterback. Some people have Jaden Daniels ahead of him. I don't. I've got Jalen Hurts at 3rd behind Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson.
Agreed.
And so, yeah, I mean, but there's no value there. I mean, he's going to get drafted in the 3rd or 4th round. But Devontae Smith is a guy maybe you can get in the 7th round And he averaged over 15 points per game last year. He just missed time because, of injury.
Mm-hmm.
And so, say that Saquon Barkley does miss time, or say the scenario that you talked about and that they don't want to use him as much and they throw the ball a little bit more. Both of those scenarios are very positive for a guy like Devontae Smith. Another player too, and I will watch this battle and see what happens. A.J. Dillon and Will Shipley. Okay?
Yeah.
One of those two guys is going to be the handcuff for Saquon Barkley, and I'm telling you right now, and listen, you may not think A.J. Dillon's any great shakes or Shipley's any great shakes, but the bottom line here is that if I draft Saquon Barkley and I know one of those two guys is the clear handcuff, I will be thinking hard about adding them just in case. Just in case. It's almost like Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
Christian McCaffrey, who I don't think is worth a first-round pick in fantasy because the guy's been hurt 3 of the last 5 years. He's awesome when he's not hurt, but he's just been hurt a lot, and he's 29. Like, you need to get Isaac Guerrero. So there are going to be scenarios that running backs, Ken Walker, you need to get Zach Charbonnet. You can go on and on and on. Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier.
Yeah.
But that backup running back position in Philadelphia is going to be interesting.
It's a tough one to figure out because I feel like Dillon would get the majority of carries, Mike, but I feel like Shipley has the receiving aspect. I don't know why I'm comparing it to this backfield, but when Adrian Peterson went down after his big year, and it was Matt Asiata and Jerick McKinnon, it's kind of that weird, it's like Asiata's going to get the red zone work, but McKinnon's going to get the receptions. That's what I'm kind of nervous about with the Eagles backfield if Saquon went down. Is like, I might just avoid that because I'm not sure which one's going to be more valuable.
I just used to love to say Asiata on the when I was on air at NFL Network.
The 4 touchdown game. I don't know why I'll always remember that.
That guy had fantasy value for a few minutes. He
did,
and yeah, that's exactly right. And that kind of thing happens. So I can remember. I'm not sure what year it was, but it was one of the Saints running backs that went down. I don't remember if it was like a Deuce McAllister or it may have been a little bit later on. Maybe it was like a Mark Ingram. But everyone thought that like C.J. Spiller was going to end up being the guy, but ended up being Tim Hightower.
Right.
And so like you never know. But yeah, it would probably be a committee in Philadelphia, but I'd be looking at who's second on the depth chart, who's going to get the early down work, who's going to get the goal line work, and I'm guessing that would probably be A.J. Dillon. But A.J. Dillon hadn't played a lot of football lately too, so that's definitely something that I would be keeping tabs on if I have Saquon Barkley. And if you're talking about dynasty, which of course me and Marcus Mosher talk about all the time, Saquon Barkley's going way too high. He's going, I think, 4th or 5th at running back. Like, guys,
dynasties, you got to think long term. That was going to be my next question because again, you're hosting Locked On Dynasty with Marcus. Is there just from an NFC East perspective, because the Eagles' offense, they're all in their prime. Like, there isn't really a second year, first round receiver that's up and coming, right? That's going to take that step. Is there an NFC East guy in general, like that might be your favorite dynasty pick right now? Because the other teams it feels like it's a little bit different where they're at compared to the Eagles.
So are we talking about a startup dynasty league?
Yeah, like if it's, you're trying to start your franchise, like you're brand new to dynasty and you want a guy for the long term, like a face of your franchise.
The easy call is Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels is
Are you nervous about a regression this year with Jaden?
Yeah, I am. I compared his first year potential to Robert Griffin III, and he was better.
Sure.
He was better. But then we all know what happened with RG3. Obviously Jaden Daniels didn't get hurt last year, thank God. So, and hopefully it doesn't happen, this upcoming season. But yeah, you have to think about regression, especially when a player has had a lot of work, like a Saquon, or a player's never done it before, right? Give you an example. Last year, Bucky Irving, when he took over the starting role, he was great. But is that guaranteed to happen again? Like, we know he's going to end up the season as a starter. Rashad White still lingers. He's still looming. They still have Sean Tucker. So, there's certain situations where, that guy was really great in year one. Now, unless it's like some kind of high-end prospect type of player, say Ashton Jeanty this year. Say Ashton Jeanty comes out and he ends up being a top 5 running back. I'm not going to worry about regression next year because I kind of knew that guy was going to be that dude. Right. But with other players like a Bucky Irving who wasn't drafted prominently, who didn't enter the season as a starter and then pops, there's certain things you gotta concern yourself with.
Jalen Hurts, I think that's part of why I have him ahead of Burrow and Daniels right now, like right behind Lamar and Allen. I kind of agree with that. Yeah. It's because I think Burrow and Daniels take a little bit of a step back, whereas Hurts, I just feel like he's going to maintain that QB3, QB4 spot.
The only thing that could stop him is if the NFL bans the tush push.
So maybe we have one more year of Jalen
Yeah,
being
right,
QB3.
exactly. I mean, when you're rushing for 15 friggin' touchdowns as a quarterback,
he's had 13 plus 3 straight years.
That's bananas. It's unbelievable. That's why he and Josh Allen, and then certainly
Agreed.
Lamar Jackson, are just so valuable. Anytime you can get a quarterback who can run, who's got any type of game as a pass. I mean, look at Justin Fields. He's not the great passer.
Yeah,
he's been a top 10 running.
I was gonna say he's one of my favorite picks of quarterback this year.
Me too. I was so nervous when he got hurt. I'm like, oh God, typical Jets. But it seems like he's okay. Yeah. And this guy rushed for 1,100 yards one year. So rushing quarterbacks are valuable, and that's why Jalen Hurts is so valuable, both on the field and from a fantasy perspective.
Great stuff from Michael Fabiano, senior fantasy analyst at Sports Illustrated, one of our new hosts of the Locked On Dynasty podcast with Marcus Mosher. You can find that wherever you get your podcast. Mike, thanks so much, man. A lot of great fantasy info. I'm ready for my draft now.
You got it, buddy, and good luck to your Eagles as if you really needed it.
Thanks.